to introduce you to my boys shirt. In this video we're going to have a quick look at the shirt. I'm using contrast fabric a lot on this for the collars and the cuffs and also for the yoke on the inside. I have added 2 pleats at the back and plenty of top stitching so that you've got a really nice shape to it. The sleeves don't hang over the shoulders, they're actually fairly fitted, although it is put in one and not after the side seams are closed. You can vary this shirt and make it look really grown up with like 2 little buttons here, and I used a contrast on the inside. And what I like about this shirt is that we've got the little tabs on the side. They have no need at all, but I think they look cool. The back shirt is a little bit longer, so it looks really nice. And then the pockets, you can also put the tip of the pocket to the outside and top stitch it from there if your fabric looks the same from the inside and the outside. This example is the age 5 to 6, and here I've done double buttons, so you can just put the buttons where you like. I left it open a little bit further at the bottom, and then I've used the same check I've just had on the other shirt. I'm also going to show you how to make a gentleman's cuff, and you're going to learn this great technique. And here you can see all the contrast fabric, and it's also peeping out from under the collar. And you can wear the collar up like that, and I think that would look really cool. Now I want to show you this one. I've made a little video showing you how to put on the poppers. A, it looks really cool, but then B, it's also quite practical. So if you wanted to learn how to put these on, I show you that in a separate video. And please don't put polka dot fabric on really nice cool boy fabric. Done. My husband said, "What have you done?" So when you get the pattern, it comes in A4 or letter size, which are not the same. Letter is shorter and wider. So be careful there, order the right one. Then open up your document and put it to print. And you get a little window, and you need to select actual size and 100%. Sometimes people have said, oh, it doesn't quite print off right. So if it doesn't, try 105%, because sometimes there is a border around it, which the printer automatically does, and you want to make sure that you allow for that. So if 100 is a tiny little bit too small, try 105, and then you can press print. The pattern looks like this, and you've got scales on here that you need to measure and make sure that it is indeed 1 inch or 5 centimeters. Here we've got a dashed line, and the dashed line tells you this is where we overlap. This is where another piece, piece A, has to be attached to piece B. And for all the big pieces, I've got different colored flowers on there, so you know this is my sleeve. It's got the yellow flower, it belongs together. Then I've got the front with a white flower, so you know that belongs together. And finally for the back, I've got a pink flower. The rest of the patterns all come in single pieces. So I make little piles of whatever goes together, because actually on the bigger sizes, of course, you've got more pieces for each individual pattern piece. So let's have a look at the back to demonstrate this. So the back on the bigger sizes here has 3 pieces, and we need to get rid of that overlap like that. And here we shift that in as well. And on the smaller size, we've only got 2 pieces, and we put those together. So don't get confused and say, oh, I didn't have the right amount of pieces. Every size is different. There's less pieces for the smaller sizes, obviously, because more fits onto one of the paper sheets. That's the front, also needs to be put together. And then here we've got the sleeve together. Again, this is 2 pieces. And then the yoke has got A and B. That's the same for every size. The cuff needs to be cut 4 times. Got that one, and then there's the collar stand. You can just leave it as one piece and cut on the fold, but if you want to have them as one piece because you're cutting the collar in the same fabric, then I think that is a good way to do it, because otherwise you'll be there forever cutting out. These are the pieces you need to make the gentleman's cuff, and then we've also got the little tab which goes on the side seam. I've got two pockets for you, the one with a round end here, and then we've got a straighter one which is a little bit easier to make. The round one, you will fold this over actually to the wrong side, and then it's turned in and top stitched. And if your fabric is the same inside out kind of thing, then of course you can have the tip coming to the outside like you saw on the example shirt. Otherwise, we're just going to have that stitching line and we're sewing from the right side. And I'm going to show you how you do that to get it right, and also how to get that curve beautifully round. The straight pocket is of course much easier, and we've got a corner there because I think that looks really cool. And well, that concludes the pattern really. I just want to show you how to do the front, because that might be a little confusing. What you need to do is fold over where the pleat is. That is 2 millimeters over from the dashed line that you've got on there, those little dots. Yeah, and then go over to the next pleat so you can see that there is a little gap. It's not directly on the dotted line. That's really important actually. So now we're going to turn it over and we're going to fold the dotted line in again. And that will now fit under into that pleat. So we're going to see that in a minute. So I'm going to pleat it all down so you can see. And there it goes underneath it. It's a great technique if you don't want a separate placket. Turn it over, and then we're going to top stitch where you have got that dotted line, and that will hold the fabric in place. I've chosen a fairly heavyweight quilting cotton really, and a lightweight cotton as a contrast, and of course we need some Vilene, that's iron-on interfacing for the collars and the cuffs and the front. I also got 10 buttons. You can also use 12 if you want to put them on the tab, and a matching thread. We're going to look at the cutting out now. You can cut everything on the fold if you are using a contrast for the collar, the stand and the yoke. If you don't, you need to put the front piece down, and of course that uses a lot more fabric, and you can cut out like this. But I'm using a contrast on this one, and so that's why I'm just using them halfway, so I don't need to open out the fabric and cut them singularly. The backs of course also cut on the fold. If your fabric has one direction, you need to make sure that the sleeve runs the direction that your pattern goes. But for this, actually we're quite lucky, my frocks run both ways, so I can just put it on. And a little mention here for the cutting out. Try cutting so that the pattern piece lies on the right hand side of your scissors, so your left hand can guide the fabric a little bit. You've got a lot more control over what you're doing when you're doing it like that. And for this shirt you need, for the little one here, that's the 1 to 2 years old, I've used 70 centimeters, but I would always recommend just get a meter. So what, if you've got a little bit left over, you can use it as a contrast for another shirt. It's sometimes when your fabric is not so wide, it's just better to have a little bit more. Now I'm cutting out my contrast, so you put your upper collar on there as well and cut it again so that you've got one in the shell fabric, one in the contrast. And when you come to put your Vilene on, remember on this part of the collar, the iron-on interfacing is going on the stripy fabric. And then you cut the collar and you cut the yoke. Finally, I'm going to cut my cuffs. I put them on so that my lines run lengthways along the cuff. Now I'm going to cut the iron-on interfacing, one for the collar, one for the collar stand, and two for the cuffs. When you want to cut yourself some strips for the front, which reinforce the placket, then you use this little pattern piece I've got here, or you do what I do. You just fold over your iron-on interfacing, and then we're going to put some pins in the side. I'm actually going to measure this and then draw it. I think this is also possible. You can draw on either side of your pattern piece. I think using a ruler is much more accurate, so I would do that. I always do it. It's 2.8 centimeters, not 3, because sometimes when you iron over, you always iron a little bit more than you actually have in your interfacing, and that's why it's 2.8. So that extra millimeter is allowed on both sides, and then it comes out really perfect. You cut them out and you've got your strips. If you have a market which sells iron-on interfacing in strips already, because they do, it comes on a big roll and the rolls are dirt cheap, so then get yourself one of those rolls and then you don't need to cut it. Now we're going to make sure that we've snipped everything so that everything that needs to be lined up can be lined up, and that's the center back. It is here, those snips, they show you where the sleeve needs to be attached, and then on the other side, and of course the lower center part of the yoke as well. Go on and snip it, there you go. And I'm also going to snip the center for my under collar, so on the contrast and on the shell fabric. And the upper collar as well. It takes so much time to prepare all of this, but when you've done that, you can just sit at the sewing machine and sew it, and it will then actually make it a lot faster. We also snip that little dotted line on either side so we know where to fold down our little pocket. And now have a few more snips on the sleeve. And then I cut right into the sleeve here at the back. That's where I'm going to put my fastening. And then you want to snip that, and you snip not here, but you snip just where the pleat is. And on the lower part, you can snip, of course, the dotted line and the other dotted line, because that's where your filing or your iron-on interfacing needs to stop. Got a few more bits to cut here on the back, so basically all the notches need to be cut, but don't cut them too far. I don't cut them all the way to where my little notch ends. So thank you for watching, everyone. Bye.